Hello, everybody, and welcome to another session of our MediKeeper webinars. My name is Daryl Gordon, and I'm the Vice President of Marketing at MediKeeper. Couple of very quick housekeeping notes before we get to our speakers. The session is being recorded, and it will be available afterwards on our website as an on-demand webinar available 24/7. We're scheduled to run 25 minutes today, and we are going to allow for questions using the chat functionality that you'll find at the bottom of your screen. But I apologize in advance if we don't get to all the questions. We promise we will follow up with them afterwards. So today's session is called What is Your Wellness Program Missing? And to walk us through the topic and to introduce our guest speaker today is Dr. Tyler Amell. He's the Chief Health and Strategy Officer at MediKeeper. Dr. Amell, we are looking forward to today's session.
Thanks very much, Daryl, and good morning. I like the title Shelf. I think we should update my LinkedIn bio with that, Daryl. So thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us here today. It's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Mark Campbell, who's going to be the guest today, and this is going to be a very interesting conversation. Now, as is customary, these are the affiliations and disclosures. Both Mark and I wear a few different hats. As Daryl mentioned, I'm the Chief Health and Strategy Officer at MediKeeper. I'm also on faculty at Pacific Coast University for Workplace Health Sciences, and I also sit on the WellCoa Advisory Council as well as the Executive Board of the Work Wellness Institute. My email is up on the screen as well as my LinkedIn link. Please feel free to reach out on LinkedIn. I'm very active in promoting applied research and evidence-informed practice in the workplace health and productivity space there. And of course, health and well-being is an integral part of that. But today it's all about Mark. So Mark is the owner and chief performance officer at Campbell Performance. He is an executive board member at WellCoa, and he's also on the WellCoa Advisory Council with me. His email is up there, his website is up there, and his Instagram handles. So Nature of Wellness and Campbell Performance. Now, what's fascinating is, Mark has a very interesting pathway to his point here today. He's done work in Major League Baseball. He's done work with the Department of Defense. He's got some very interesting stories and some very unique applications of health and productivity solutions in the workplace. So I think there's so much there that we're probably going to have Mark on at a later date. We'll definitely keep an eye out for a future one. Now, Mark, is there anything you wanted to highlight with regards to your bio before we dive into today's topic?
No, I know we're talking about nature today as a primary source of worksite wellness programming, and that it's an important topic for me. I started the Nature of Wellness company a few years ago, Tyler, for this very reason. There's a robust library of hardcore evidence-based research out there on the effects of nature holistically on our health and well-being, but unless you know where to look and who to ask, it's really not readily available, and a lot of people don't know about it. So we wanted to be a mouthpiece for that, and that's why we started the company and the podcast.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. And it's interesting. You and I were in Scottsdale a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about this very thing. This problem that we have with translating research into practice. Historically, when researchers wrote grants and got funding for their research, they would go about it, carry it out in a vacuum, and then send a report back to the funding agencies. And it's only been relatively recently that there's knowledge translations and knowledge transfer plans in place, really to get people to apply the research outcomes. And part of that is acknowledging the fact that sometimes it's quite difficult to truly understand and where to find this research, given how many
Mhm.
journals there are out there that are publishing peer-reviewed information. I myself, I come across journals, at least every month that I've never even heard of.
Right.
Very low impact factors, but they're publishing content out there that presumably
Mhm.
goes through a rigorous process. So in light of that, usually at this point in the webinar, I sort of talk about some of my recent talks and what's coming up. Of course, we did a webinar a month ago where we had a consultant from Hub, and we talked about what should employers be looking for in wellness. I gave a keynote on the role of technology in innovative health behavior change for the International Foundation of Employee Benefit Plans at the Health Innovations Conference. I did a session for Caravan Wellness. On advancing wellness for healthcare professionals, given the issues that are impacting the healthcare service delivery, violence in the workplace, all of the fun stuff, burnout, rust out, you name it. So that was a very interesting presentation. Of course, today we're talking about what your wellness program is missing, and then I'm very interested to hear what Mark has to say. Next week for National Employee Benefits Day, which is April 2nd, I'll be giving the opening keynote at Woodruff Sawyer's annual conference. This is on evidence-based wellness, the science behind behavior change. And unfortunately, I wish I had a whole bunch more to release, but my speaking schedule is not yet fully confirmed. So expect a lot more for Q2 through Q3 and Q4 here in the near term as I sort of round those out. I do have a couple of private events. Usually some employers bring me in to speak specifically to their employers, as do some of the consulting firms, just to update, them on what's going on in the workplace health and productivity space. So, more than happy to do those where there's good alignment there. But let's move on to today's topic. So, this is quite interesting. So Mark has the podcast, Nature of Wellness, tremendously successful. Lots of people tuning in every week for this. And this is the second season that you're in right now, right?
Yeah, we're just at the halfway point of season 2.
Excellent. All right, good. So, you've probably uncovered a lot of neat things, a lot of learnings, a lot of evidence out there. So let's dive into the research evidence for a second here. Let's explore what is the research evidence to support time in nature and health, and what's the relationship between those two elements?
Sure. And if I could just back up just for a second and say that my co-host on the podcast, Steve Otero, is an Air Force wounded warrior. I met him with the work I was doing in the DoD wounded warrior programs. And Steve really piqued my interest in the science behind this because he tried all the traditional types of therapy for injury and PTSD, and nothing really worked until he added in nature therapy, and he saw massive gains in development in his recovery and rehabilitation. And this came out of a few conversations I had with wounded warriors about a year and a half ago. And then in the same week, a physician who was a neighbor of mine at the time, husband and wife, both physicians, and she was at a large research institution nearby, and her little boys were playing in the woods behind our house. And we started talking about how happy they were and how focused they were after time outside. And I started reciting some of the research that's out there. And she was so frustrated and said, I'm a physician at one of the best institutions in the world. I've never heard any of this as an oncology doctor. Why don't I know this? And that's why I said, I'll start a podcast. No background, no experience. And I want to be a mouthpiece for all of this evidence that's out there. There are some tremendous agencies and organizations, and where I see myself in this, Tyler, is being sort of the coffee filter for the high level academic research for high level academics. And I see myself as filtering it down to the people who need it most, right? And entry level. And, some of the research that's out there, time in nature has always impacted us holistically. I mean, nature was the first teacher, the first preacher, the first doctor, the first drugstore, the first grocery store. We are part of nature, and all we do is try to wall ourselves off and stay inside. And I think, 4 out of 5 Americans live in urban environments now, and their time in nature is limited. We spend over 90% of our life indoors, which is terrifying. And all we try to do is stay inside and out of the natural world, which is what we need to thrive. We always have. But the research is showing that time in nature reduces stress. It leads to better sleep, improved mental health and clarity. And I know mental health is a big deal. I know that recently I was involved in a mental health summit through an organization that we both are involved with, Preventia at Butler University. We talked to the student athlete and the full student body populations. And a lot of the nature science that we talked about is what resonated most. And it was amazing to me that it was basic information, but folks were unaware of it. And we talked about some of the science behind mental well-being, and the fact that being outside has been proven 20 minutes outside has a similar effect or greater effect than most of the pharmaceuticals on the market for anxiety and depression, right? And greater happiness and satisfaction, reduced aggression, reduced ADHD symptoms, lower blood pressure, improved circulation, more adherence to physical fitness if you're doing it outside, right? Improved birth outcomes, congestive heart failure improvements, childhood development. There are studies that say that 20 minutes outside pre-testing shows a 40% increase in child cognition. right? So if you're outside at recess, which really doesn't exist anymore in American schools, unfortunately, outside, before taking a test, the kids are 40% more cognitively aware of what's happening, and they're able to focus more and have better cognitive performances. So, I mean, I could go on and on. Reduced obesity, improved pain control, reduced diabetes, better eyesight. I mean, the list goes on and on. I could go dimension by dimension in the well-being models, and I have, and break down exactly what benefits are there based in hardcore science and evidence-based research.
Okay, that's really good to hear, and definitely in alignment with a lot of our previous conversations.
Mhm.
Now, so I'm an occupational epidemiologist by training, so cause and effect, right? So, what do you think the rationale is? Like, what's actually happening when people are exposed to nature on a physiological level that is driving these changes in this huge list of positive health benefits?
Oh gosh, Tyler, there's so many. I'll give you a couple. Trees, when you're around trees or green spaces with a lot of lush plant life, these plants, trees primarily, are releasing what are known as phytoncides, right, which are volatile organic compounds, and they're constantly reigning over each other. They're protecting each other, and these compounds have antifungal, antimicrobial properties. They limit pest infestation. So when we're among these trees or these plants, we're getting showered in those phytoncides as well, and we're breathing those in, and it's having the same effect on us, and it's actually increasing our natural killer cells, which travel the body and seek out diseases and cancers, and they really help our bodies fight some of those chronic things that we're dealing with, uh, which are increasing in society. Those top killers.
Mhm.
There's also the attention restoration theory that the Kaplans came up with years ago about being able to rest your soft focus on the distance with nature, and it helps eyesight, it helps attention, it helps focus. So I mean, I could talk about it all day, and I do. So I don't know if
Don't know
there's
how
anything
deep
in
we want to go,
particular.
right?
Yeah, exactly. And,
Well,
and
one of the
really,
ones I'm interested in Mark, and it's interesting you bring up the test scores,
mhm,
because I think back to some of the research that I'm aware of that I've been reading over the years, and people's exposure to colors
mhm,
has a profound impact on them. They typically green is the most relaxing color for most
mhm,
people out there. So, I'm wondering if you could just comment on that, because in the study I read recently, they exposed young students to different types of colors, and when they were exposed to green, everything was quite good. When they were exposed to harsher colors and more severe colors, they didn't actually do as well as they would have
mhm.
done had they been exposed to that nature, or maybe even the 40% increase in their cognition with regards to the tests.
Yeah. I mean, again, the research is there, and it continues to come out more and more consistently. I think everything you're saying is what I'm reading. Um, the most simplistic way I can put it, Tyler, is the color green and the color blue are the two most calming colors for a number of reasons. But in our primal brain, green means abundance, it means life, it means growth, it means food, right? Blue means water, which is life, life around the water, sustainability. So on a primal level, whenever we see greens and blues, we instantly calm, right? And they're showing a lot of research in the classrooms where if classrooms have indoor plant life, the kids are more behaved, and their attention and cognition is improved. And I've talked to folks who are doing a lot of wellness programs with nature in schools, and they're starting to do like growth programs with kids where they get like a little seedling, and it's on their desk, and every day they're in charge of that seed and growing it, and they're showing benefit. So I think blue has also been one of the primary colors for sleep, improved sleep. If your bedroom is blue, it's shown that you go to sleep easier, stay asleep longer, and go back to sleep if it's disturbed. So
Mhm.
something like color, or I could touch on biophilia in a minute and one of the other questions, but bringing nature inside, just the colors of nature, just like what's on the screen right now, photos and images like that, so important.
Mhm. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I see it in healthcare settings as well.
Hmm.
When you go into hospitals who have a green in place, less institutional,
Hmm.
more welcoming, better outcomes. And I think one of the fascinating things from my perspective is as the climate continues to warm and we go through climate change, we've got a lot more fire, a lot more everything, a lot more of those harsher colors out there, a lot more anxiety,
Yeah.
risk in that sense. So let's change gears a little bit because I totally agree with you. We could spend hours on this.
Hmm.
So what role does time in nature play in workplace health and wellness? So let's steer this back towards the workplaces. So instead of, the educational system and those sort of things, let's focus in on what the majority of our listeners are focused in on, and that's health and productivity solutions in the workplace.
Sure. And, I think that like with a lot of research, it's transferable, right? So
Mhm.
if you're talking about general benefits like improved cognition, increased calm, lower stress, lower anxiety and depression symptoms, all of that plays into workplace absenteeism, presenteeism, insurance claims, illness. Anytime we can do anything to help that population proactively stay more healthy, we're going to lower all of those costs. We're going to keep people happy and more productive, right? And you mentioned the performance work I've done in the past. There are a lot of links to the performance stuff, and I would love to come back on and talk about that. But even with like professional athletes, I know this is getting a little off on a side street, but I would take them out of the clubhouse environment, out of the broom closet office that my desk was in every day to do performance psychology, and we would go outside, and I would hand them a fly rod. I'm a big fly angler, and teach them fly casting, right, and have them stand barefoot and do some grounding. So any chance to get away from the office for a few minutes. And the science is very clear about time in nature and how much is needed to show a biochemical change. It's only 20 minutes a day, right? At minimum, hopefully more. But 20 minutes a day has been shown to promote a lot of these benefits that we're talking about today. And if the workplace can offer that, and again, one of my favorite things about nature, and this gets me in trouble with some audiences, but it's free, right? I mean, nature is right outside your front door. It's not the Instagram picture of hanging off of a mountain in Nepal trying to take a selfie, or some exotic location. Literally right outside your front door. There's air, there's sky, there are clouds. Back to the biophilic piece, which I do want to mention in this section. E.O. Wilson did a lot of the research on biophilia. A lot of folks are bringing it into design now. Buildings are being built. Construction industry is really embracing biophilic design, and it's just bringing elements of the outdoors inside for these same benefits. And again, it's not as intense as being outside for 20 minutes, but you're still reaping some of those benefits with color, like you said, with natural textures, building out of wood instead of plastic. There's a lot of research coming out about nature sounds, naturescape, bird sounds, especially. Bird sounds fall within that 65 to 75 decibel range, which humans find most appealing. And that's why we say birds sing. So when we hear bird sounds, we instantly calm. When we hear water sounds, we instantly calm, right? And having fountains, having disrupted water, when we're sitting in front of a screen like we're doing right now all day long, we're just soaking in the positive ions, right? And that's having a negative effect in many ways in our minds and bodies. But when we're near disrupted water, waterfall, babbling brook, all of the places that we love as humans, instinctively, we love to be near a waterfall or near a babbling brook or a water feature. When those water ions bang into each other, they increase the negative ions around us in the air. And when we breathe those in, they have a similar effect on those natural killer cells, right? And they seek and destroy all of the bad stuff, and they make us happier and increase joy and lower the depression and anxiety. So little changes that can be made. Virtual nature, there's a huge field of evidence coming out now about having nature scenes on TVs, and having rooms where you can go which are filled with plants, relaxation rooms and recharge rooms, right? I have a colleague, Jennifer Walsh. She's doing some amazing work in New York, and she's partnering with some major institutions to really study this. Um, just little things. I mean, I do want to give a shout out to some organizations that are there, if I could, for just a second. Um, on the show, we interviewed a director on season 1 for a movie called Mending the Line, and it was sort of a revolutionary movie. It is about a combat Marine in Afghanistan who comes home with a lot of traumatic stress issues, and the VA doctor partners him with this grizzled old Vietnam era veteran played by Brian Cox from Succession, and his character Ike is a fly angler, right? So he takes this guy under his wing, never fished before. The whole movie, fly fishing is just a vehicle. It's about nature and how it helps us heal from trauma. And it's beautiful. And it's on Netflix, came out Saturday on Netflix. It's been #1 in the country for 3 days straight now. And I encourage everybody, just watch it and see how these characters interact with the natural world. It's one of the best representations of that trauma and transition process for veterans and for all of us, but veterans specifically, and then how nature can impact that.
Okay, great. That's going to be put on my watch list.
Yeah.
So, 20 minutes a day is the exposure. Does it
Mhm.
make sense to do it during the day, like the typical work day, if you're working from home, or should you do it afterwards? Because you think back to the height of the pandemic,
Mhm.
I look out my windows in my office here, and it was nonstop streaming people during the lockdowns. Everybody was outside. You couldn't buy any camping equipment. You couldn't buy any bikes. Everything was all sold out in all the stores. Supply chain issues all over the place.
Mhm.
Now I see a lot fewer people walking just in front of my little microcosm here. So I'm just wondering your thoughts on that. And let's get into, how workplaces can truly implement that time in nature programming to really help them move the needle on their health and productivity solutions.
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and I agree with you. During the pandemic and during quarantine, I was amazed at how many folks I saw outside, professionally, personally, families gardening together. Didn't realize I hadn't seen that since I was much younger. A family outside doing yard work together and playing outside, and RV sales went through the roof. Camper sales. Now's the best time to buy a camper because people are now selling them a couple of
Mhm.
years later, which is unfortunate. Time outside, recreation time in managed lands have gone through the roof in the last couple of years. National parks, state parks, people are wanting to be outside more. So workplaces can build that into the workday. I always suggest we have Microsoft Outlook and Office and all these other things, emails dinging and reminders all day long, right? And we're sort of Pavlovian about it. As soon as it dings, we know we have to go to that. So why not schedule that time? Right. In Japan, in Japanese culture, this has been part of Japanese mainstream healthcare since the early 80s. 1982, when they started switching from a pastoral society to more of an urban industrial society, they started seeing this huge increase in a lot of different new novel health challenges. So they started studying what was going on, and they realized people were indoors more. So if anybody listening is familiar with the term forest bathing, in Japan it's called Shinrin Yoku. It's about getting outside in those fighting sides, right? Being showered and bathed in those fighting sides for health benefits. So if you go to a physician in Japan, they're going to hand you a pamphlet of local parks for certain conditions. Same is true in Canada. We just
Mhm.
interviewed Dr. Melissa Lim, who was the founder of the Canadian Parks RX program, right? And she works with organizations and healthcare professionals to write prescriptions for national parks passes instead of pharmaceuticals as a first line. But for workplaces, bringing in that virtual component, bringing in more plants, bringing in the colors, building it in so where folks can take breaks. I know that's the hardest part is breaking the institutionalized view of how we should be sitting at
Mhm.
our computer all day, right? But building in those breaks where people can go out and their attention can be restored, they can find a little bit of joy and happiness. That little, as Richard Louv calls it, the vitamin N shot, right? Vitamin N for nature to really help boost their productivity and their well-being. And again, a happier, healthier, more well workforce is going to get the job done better. We know that.
Mhm. Mhm. Yes, very true. Good combination with vitamin D as well.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we're coming up on time here, and definitely, lots of food for thought here. Speaking of Japan, I was actually there earlier this year on a ski trip, and this is the bamboo forest that we went to just outside
Beautiful.
of Kyoto. So I couldn't find a picture because mine all had people, lots of people, and kids running around, which probably isn't a bad thing. But I found this
Mm-hmm.
picture, and I think this is a good way to sum that up. So, as we round it up, is there any final thoughts or final words that you'd like to pass on before we hand it over to Daryl?
The outro on every episode of the show is one simple line, which is do your health and well-being the best favor you can and just get outside. And I always try to leave with that message because it really is the most simple, the most cost-effective way to increase your health and well-being, just to step outside, absorb that full spectrum light, which has so many different benefits that we didn't even get time to talk
Mhm.
about, right? If you're inside, open windows, open blinds, have pictures of nature, bring in plants. It doesn't have to be hard, Tyler. We make it hard, right?
Mhm.
These solutions are very simple, and it's a great entry level spot to start with trying to increase your health and wellness.
Mhm. And it sounds like something very easily applicable to workplace health and productivity
Right.
solutions.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Mark. We're definitely going to have you back at a later date. We want to dive into the work you did at the DoD and your work with Major League Baseball. There's some fascinating stuff there that you've shared with me. Definitely very intriguing for our audiences for sure. So thanks once again. Daryl, over to you.
Yeah, well, as you correctly predicted, 25 minutes is not nearly enough to really scrape the surface of this topic. And unfortunately, we're not going to get to some of these questions, but I'm going to forward them to you, Tyler and Mark, to respond to the people that submitted them, because I think the topics are extremely fascinating with some very insightful questions. So to everyone that joined us today, thank you very much. As a reminder, this will be available on our website a little bit later today, that you can download and replay it and hear back some of the parts of the session and forward to friends. Thank you for joining us. This concludes today's session. Thank you for joining us and have a great day.
Thank you all. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.